Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us again. Today we're going to go through building a WebRTC video chat application. So I hope you guys find this exciting. So let's begin. So just to give a brief kind of overview or introduction, most of you probably already know, but Vidyo.io is a communication platform as a service solution. What you can do with Vidyo.io is you can build with just a few API calls, you can build a multi-party video chat application right into your solution. That could be a web page solution, a browser, native application, or even a mobile device solution. Vidyo.io works with multiple platforms, so it's cross-platform independent. It doesn't matter what device you're using, what operating system you're using, or what browsers you're using. Your clients will be able to have a video communication using Vidyo.io. So what that means is if you are building, so obviously today everybody's interested in building a web-based solution. So when you build a web-based solution using something like WebRTC, you get a lot of benefits, like your users will not need to install any plugins. They can just come to your browser, go to their browser, come to your web page, and maybe when you click off a button can join a video conference. So that's great with WebRTC. But building a WebRTC solution also comes with a lot of other kind of gotchas or interesting details that you need to pay attention to. Something like, what if you have some customers running in an old browser which doesn't support WebRTC? What do you do then? What if they're on a mobile device where WebRTC performance is still quite challenging, if not supported at all? So in those cases, especially, building a solution, your web solution using Vidyo.io will get rid of all those issues for you. So you build a web application, your user doesn't matter if they support WebRTC or not. If they do, their browser is great. It'll run just like any other WebRTC solution. But if they are in a more plugin-based solution, just like an old Internet Explorer, then Vidyo.io will take care of that for you. It has a plugin enabled, and all they need to do is then install a plugin, which they will have to do anyways for any other video communication, and they will they'll be able to join your call. And from your end, you didn't have to do anything separate. So we're going to see how we'll develop that further on. Another point to mention over here is Vidyo.io is a cloud-based solution which supports a lot of codecs, scalable codecs, and does something called selective forwarding. What does that mean, right? So when you build a multi-conference solution, you'll have people from all over the world with different devices. We'll have people, you'll have some people that will be able to, encode and decode a lot more participants than the others. So if one is on a high-end computer, they can encode and decode a lot more participants compared to a mobile device. Since Vidyo.io is a cloud-based solution, it can be smart about how many streams it sends to a particular endpoint. And that way everybody gets a high performance, highly reliable, error resilient solution. And all of this happens happens for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So let's dive into how to create one, right? So there are 5 steps involving creating a web app using Vidyo.io. The very first step is straightforward. You have to include the Vidyo.io SDK, right? So you have to include this in your project to use Vidyo.io, just like any other library. And Vidyo.io supports JavaScript. So just like any other JavaScript path, all you need to do is point the source to it, and it will get added. Second, you need to initialize the video client object. In the JavaScript project, you actually don't have to do anything separate. When you actually include the JavaScript file, we call the initialize video client for you, and it'll get initialized, and you'll get a callback saying if everything went fine or not. In a different solution, so if you're also developing a mobile app, for example, and you want an app that is connecting with the native Vidyo.io SDK, in that case, you'll probably do a separate initialize call on video client, like on Objective-C and stuff. But for our purpose over here, both these steps are taken care of when you include the JavaScript file. Third step, you create a video connector object. So again, very straightforward. It's a create connect video connector call API method. You take in a few parameters over there. The first being where you want to draw the video. The second being the type, the style. The default is you'll see a picture-in-picture when there are 2 participants, and you'll see tiles when there are more than 2. And the number of remote participants. If you want to limit the number of people that's shown on your screen, you give a number, say something like 10, 16, 4, whatever suits your UI, and a few others, which we'll dig into detail further on. So once you create your video connector object, now you're ready to go. All you need to connect is first to authenticate yourself, right? So if your user comes to your web page and they want to connect to a video call, you need to authenticate that user. And depending on your logic of how you're authenticating users, if you have something like get guest flow enabled, where the user doesn't need to log into your website, then it's completely up to you. Great, they're ready to go. All you need to do is in your backend create a token, and we have examples of how to do that. Pass that token to your website, web page, and then use that token to make a connect call. That's it. If you have a more complicated flow where a user needs to be logged into your web page, then you restrict that. You don't show the call button until they actually log in, and then you generate a token for them. So you have this flexibility on your side. Once your user has a valid token, all you need to do is then call the video connect call and pass the token and say which room you're going to connect. So that's it, just 5 steps. And when you do this connect, your user will be put into a video conferencing page. They'll be connected to all the other participants. It might be one-on-one, it might be more than one, and they'll be talking just like we are right now. So enough of talking, let's actually get our hands dirty and create this, okay? This is what we all want to do, is create a web page. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my desktop screen, and I'll do a walkthrough on how this is created. So give me just a moment before I share my screen. Okay. What you're seeing right now is an empty HTML page. We'll start with right from the empty page. If I run this on my browser, I see absolutely nothing because there's nothing on my page. So let's add something here. Let's say hello video. All right. So that's if we. There you go. So we have an empty page which does nothing but just says hello video. And now I'm going to walk you through how you would do those 5 steps to add video into your web page solution. The very first step that we discussed was adding pointing to the JavaScript source. So let's do that. You can add your script source wherever you think is right for you. It could be in the head, it could be in the body, but basically, in your video flow, ensure that this is the first thing that happens, right? Because it needs to get initialized. So as long as you do that, you will be good to go. The website is static.video.io. Here I'm going to get the latest version of our JavaScript file. And for your case, when you're developing this in production, what you typically do is instead of saying latest, you'll probably give a version number. So if you download our sample, a JavaScript sample, and you look at the code there, you'll see that over here, there's a version number. So that way, if you're building and testing your website, you point to a particular version of our SDK, do your testing, do your development and testing, see that everything is fine, and then you deploy that. And when a new version comes up, you'd probably want to do your testing before you want to release that. In my case, I'm just going to get the latest one. It's video client.js. That's about it. So this will include our JavaScript file. What I'll also do is, so when this happens, the JavaScript file will get included. It will initialize our video client for us. And then we need some kind of callback mechanism to tell us that everything went well. And the way that that's done is we take in a parameter called onLoad, and we pass in a function pointer. So something like, say, onVideoClient loaded. And I have to define this function. obviously, is what it will, nothing will get called back. I'll just put another script here, and I'll define this function out here called on video client loaded. And what gets passed down in this function is the status. So this status we can log and see what happened when, if we is actually succeeded or failed. So I'm just actually going to put some text around this. Video client load state. And, all right. Hope you guys are still with me over here. What I'm doing is nothing so far great. I'm just including a JavaScript source, and I'm seeing if this, if it loaded fine or not. So that's about it. So if I go back to my web page and I refresh, I see absolutely nothing different. But if I look at my console, you'll see that the video client load state was good to go. It's ready to go. So although nothing visually changed, we did load and initialize our video client now. Now that we have our video client ready, let's actually check the status once again, just to ensure that everything is up, everything is good. It's actually just a string, checked ready. So if we succeed in loading the video client, what we're going to do is then we're going to create our video connector object. One thing to remember is you probably want to do something more like more logging or error handling over here if it doesn't get ready. It could happen that there's no cameras or some access restrictions or something like that. So you probably want to have more error checking over here. And if you look at our samples, you'll find all of that in our samples. But for the purpose of this webinar, I'm just going to keep it simple and assume that things go well. And once I get my video client loaded, I'm going to create my video connector. All right. So creating a video connector, what are the parameters for that? The very first parameter is the view ID. What is a view ID? A view ID is nothing but the ID of your HTML element where you want the video to be rendered. So in my case, I'm just going to create another div here, and I'm going to call it, say, renderer. Right. So once I create a div here, I have an HTML element that I can point to, and I can tell Vidyo.io saying, hey, throw the video in that element. So that should be it. The next important one is the style. Currently, we have a couple of styles, the default and dial. As we, in our future releases, we probably will keep adding new video styles, default styles. So over here, it will, if you have a multi-party conference, you'll see the Hollywood blocks kind of style over here. So you'll see multiple participants. Next, the number of remote participants. Keep in mind that the remote participants is the maximum number you can set. It doesn't mean that you'll always see 16 people. If there are 16 people in the conference, you might not see all 16 because your network or your computer might not be able to handle decoding all those remote participants, and which is fine. So usually are looking at the so if your system can handle 10, you'll be able to see 10. If you have a low-end system, low network, and you can handle just 4, you'll see just 4. But what you're doing here is setting the maximum you want to show. Then is the log filter. So I want all my logs to be filtered just for error and nothing. So if you put something like info, you'll get more detailed log messages. Here I'm just logging the error. And then for file name, I'm going to keep it empty. The user data, I'm not going to use either. This user data is not required by Vidyo.io, but this is something that you can reference later on. If you create multiple video connector objects, you can reference them and find out which one's which by passing something in the user data. So that's purely for your convenience. Then the video connector is basically created asynchronously. So once we use the promise pattern to figure out if things went well, And let's see. And if everything goes well, what you'll get is the video. You created a video connector object, so you'll get that. And I'm just going to log saying create success. And then if things go wrong, I have my catch function, error, get an error, and that's about it. I can log the error out here as well. And let's just create failed. And I think I can type in the error. Work there. All right. Let's see what we've done so far. We just created a video connector object. Let's see if that actually succeeded. Now, if I refresh, oh, I missed something on line 21. Looks like I did a catch function error. What did I miss? So, you know what? Let's leave this out for now. All right. That's it. So if you notice, you don't have to do anything more than create a video connector object. The video connector object will take care of all the WebRTC media handling APIs for you. So you do the get user media. It's going to pop this up. You can select your camera. I'm going to say allow, and not FaceTime. I want this camera. I'm going to allow, and hey, there you go. So my website can now actually see me and start using my media. So that's great. So in terms of the usability of Vidyo.io compared to all the WebRTC APIs, it's pretty straightforward. You create one object and you're good to go. That's great. So once that's done, which is great, but now we actually want to go into a call, right? We want to actually join a particular video conference. So let's add a function called join call, all right? And what happens over here is we just need to connect to a video conference. How do we do that? To do that, we need the video connector object that we created over here. So I'm going to declare a global variable for video connector, and I'm just going to save it down here. Connector equals VC. There you go. And global, I can use it out here. Obviously, you'd probably want to do a bit more checking if the object is ready or not before you call the function, but for simplicity, let's assume everything looks great. And I'm just going to connect using this video connector object. All right, so what do we need to connect to the first thing that we need is the server, and for all our deployment purposes, this is going to be prod.vidyo.io. And what you need is a token. If you guys don't know what a token is, I'd recommend looking at our documentation. And we also have one of the webinars we did was generating token. So I'd recommend to go look up that webinar, and which talks in detail about what tokens are. It's basically authentication credential. And we use this to you will create tokens to authenticate your users for you. And how to generate them, where to generate them, we have a webinar, so I would encourage go look at that. And if you go to our website, we have a code samples, and we also have a GitHub example where you can host a token generator. So I'd encourage you to go look at that. The next thing that we need is a name for the user. So here I'm just going to give my name in. Obviously, in your website, you pass this in from somewhere else. And the room you want to join, let's say I want to join a room called demo room. Again, this resource ID is basically a room name, like a virtual room name. You can create, it's just a name, it's just a string. So you can create one on the fly, like over here. You can have the user enter it, or you can create some beforehand which you want to use and pass it down over here as a parameter, and then your users will join that room. So it's as simple as that. All right. Then we have a few callback functions so that you know what's happening. So if you succeed in joining, we have the on success callback. If you fail, we have the on failure callback. Or the on failure callback actually gives you a reason saying why it failed. So you can look at that. After that, we also have another callback called on disconnected. The on disconnected could be for multiple reasons. Again, it could be that the user themselves disconnected from the call. It could be that they were kicked out for some reason. So you can look at the reason field and see what happened. So you can log this as well. Let's see, disconnected and reason. And what else? We can log the success. Connected, yay. All right. Oh. And if we fail, which usually in the first go we will, but let's see, it's pretty simple, so it should be fine. And we can say connection failed. All right. So now we have a function that joins a call. We need to call this function from somewhere. I'm going to add a button on my HTML page and add an on-click event. So when we click on that, we will call join call. Simple as that. And let's say something like connect and that. Now we need a valid token to join this call. So as I mentioned, we have a few samples. What I'm going to use for my purpose over here is our Python script. It's called generate-token.py. You can go to our website, go to our documentation, and if you go to the token section, you will find links to download all these scripts. So just a brief overview of what this does, it takes in your developer key, so we know which account to build. It takes in the app ID, so we know which app users we are connecting. Takes in the username, and it takes in how long this is valid for. So I'm going to create a token valid for an hour. So when I do this, I get the token. So this is what needs to be passed in this parameter here. Again, there are samples to host this as a service. There's samples to in C#, in Python, in Java, etc. Go take a look at that. All right, so this is done. It's all set up. Now, if we go back to our website, where did I keep it? I kept it over here. I said hello video. I said connect. I'm going to allow. I'm going to also look at my console to see if everything is good. So far it's all good. I'm going to click on connect. And oh, there you go. There I connected. And hey guys, thanks for joining me in my quick demo app. So there you go. In just 10 minutes or so, we developed a web page which can join multi-party video conferencing.